Hey class, my name is Christina Spadoro. You just heard from Alicia about how math expectations have changed over time, the Common Core standards in relation to mathematics, and how teachers can help students meet these needs. In order to determine how teachers are going to meet the needs of their students, we really need to look at the common texts used in the math classroom. So here you see three types of texts that are typically found in math classrooms across all grade levels. So the most typical text seen is the math textbook, especially in middle school and high school levels. That's usually the only book you see. The textbook, as many of you know, usually gives an explanation of a skill, some definitions of math terms, examples of how to execute a skill, and then plenty of practice problems for students to kind of grasp the skill. In younger grades, you may see the math stories and math content readers. In my experience as a second grade teacher, the math story tends to be presented before students are taught a new unit to give a preview of what the skill will be. And a math content reader is specific to a skill and can be used as a supplement to the textbook during a specific lesson or as a math center. All right, so typical math textbooks. Here's a little bit more information. So they're usually the core or only literary device used in a math class, as I mentioned before. And this is really because most content area teachers are reluctant to use other forms of texts once you reach the middle and high school grades, even with this push towards embedding literacy practices into the content area classrooms. That being said, the textbook does have features that students should be familiar with from informational texts. These features include bold print, definitions, charts, diagrams, and many other text and graphic features that students have seen throughout their experience in other informational texts. Math texts also require students to subconsciously use some reading strategies such as making predictions, previewing, and summarizing. Students may make a prediction on how they will use doubles facts to help solve near doubles facts, or be required to summarize the skill or concept that they learned at the end of a lesson, chapter, or unit, maybe part of an exit slip or just as a class discussion. More information about the typical math textbooks. Comprehension strategies are presented in textbooks, but they allow the students to just kind of read and understand the text at a surface level. Often that's enough for students to grasp the procedure and execute the skill. However, these strategies are so basic that they don't push students to go beyond just the text and think critically, problem solve, or develop conceptual understandings. So here I created a web of some of the components that you'll see relate to mathematical literacy and what make up mathematical literacy, which is a lot more than just reading instructions and applying the skill. Students need to be able to put math in context and connect to real-world examples that they've experienced or have heard of. Students need to be able to communicate the information they have obtained from the text in a way that's meaningful. Students need to also understand concepts and be able to execute skills by showing their work or creating a visual in which they can explain the steps of their procedure. Explaining is such a critical part of mathematics. If you get an answer, that's great, but how did you get it? There's a really big push towards that, especially in the younger grades right now, to get students to start thinking about explaining and using mathematical language. So as you can see, the math literacy is much more, it's much more complex than it seems when you just open up a typical math textbook. Put my slides. Let's just start thinking about going beyond the textbook. Students should be interacting with any form of text that can relate to math or create meaning in a mathematical way. These texts can include picture books, informational texts, newspaper articles, videos, real-world examples, literally anything that you can construct meaning from relating to math. There's so many options. So teachers just need to not feel limited to the textbooks provided by the district and start to really think outside the box. Most importantly, no matter what the content is, any class, any subject, keeping student interests in mind is always the key to comprehension and enhanced student learning. Students will listen to you and they'll want to learn and work hard and really understand a concept when it's exciting, when it's relatable, when they think it's cool. So that's really something to keep in mind. So next you'll hear from Eileen about how math is changing, and here's some recommendations for comprehension strategies in the math classroom.